Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 515, 515, Thursday, August the 9th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, everybody's talking about the story written by John Solomon, and of course, which is based largely on the 302's with Bruce Orr, the FBI's questioning of Bruce Orr. It's funny because it's on the list of things that they're talking about that may be declassified. But at the rate that these things are being leaked to Solomon, by the time they get declassified, Solomon will probably already have all the 302's of the interviews with Bruce Orr in the FBI. So anyway, there's some very interesting things coming out, and a lot of people raising a lot of questions. It's going to need to be chewed on for a couple days. I watched a Tracy Bean video a little earlier, and she's chewing on something that a lot of people are chewing on, and it's this question of who is this person that they're referring to as our guy. Our guy. So I have a pretty good idea who I think our guy is. Most other people have not jumped out there and speculated. I'm going to tell you who I think our guy is and why. That will be toward the end of the video. That's the last thing I'll talk about in detail. But there's a couple other things that go along with that. So as I go through the first part of today's video, I'll splash a few things out there that are related, along with some other stuff. And then at the end of the video, I'll tie all that together for you. So just bear with me. Okay, so one of the biggest stories that came out today in the Daily Caller, or many other places, many other sources for it, but I'm citing the Daily Caller. The Senate Intel Committee wants to interview Assange. Well, let me give you some good advice, Julian. No, no, no. You do not want to talk to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Not the Senate Intelligence Committee. Remember, it was the Senate Intelligence Committee with Warner and Burr and all those other characters that we were talking about months ago when they were trying once before to get a deal, to have Julian Assange testify and try to cut a deal. It was all approved and Comey shot it down. Again, this will figure into today's discussion at the end of the video when I dive a little deeper into the issue at question about our guys. But let's just stay focused on why Julian Assange should never talk to the Senate Intelligence Committee. They are not on his team, I can assure you of that. They represent the rotten Reverend Clinton, for the most part, and the establishment. They are the most deep state gatekeeper committee in the Congress, the most corrupt in the Congress. So, Julian, you do not want to talk to the Senate Intelligence Committee. What you should say to their request, and because you've dealt with them once before, and how did it go before? They cut you off at the knees. After basically having a deal with you. They cut you off at the knees, Julian. Same guys. Here's what you should do, Julian. You should say no to the Senate Intel Committee, but agree that you will testify, and they want him in closed hearings, by the way. Does that surprise you? Here's what you say, Julian. No to closed hearings with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Yes to the fact that you would testify with the House Oversight Committee with Mr. Goodlatte, or the House Intelligence Committee with Devin Nunes, and that you would do it in a public, open hearing. That would include presenting the documents, which you say you have, Julian, which prove that the Russians or no government entity was involved in the so-called hack of the DNC, which we know wasn't a hack at all. That's what you should say, Julian. Do not go to the Senate Intelligence Committee for any reason and talk to them for any reason. They are not your friends. They will screw you, Mr. Assange. But you can trust Devin Nunes, and you can probably trust Bob Goodlatte. Talk to the House Intelligence Committee. Talk to the House Oversight Committee. You can do so behind closed doors, or probably open public hearings would be better for your PR, I think. And I think they would both be open to that. They're both open to open hearings. It's the Senate Intelligence Committee that doesn't like open hearings. especially because we know all about what they were doing, previously, which we'll get to. Now, last night was a really good night in the special elections for Trump. The candidates that he endorsed, 5 of them specifically, all won. But it was a terrible night for Ocasio, Marty Feldman Eyes, Cortez. All of her candidates, I think but one, got beat and got beat badly. The establishment Democrats beat the hell out of the Ocasio-Cortez wing, the far left Democratic communists that she's been out campaigning for and speaking for the past couple of weeks. So that presents a whole other set of problems that we don't have time to go into today, but it just shows you that the rift within the Democratic Party is not even at the beginning of being solved. Because if the far left would have taken over the party, at least they would have resolved the issue. It's a far left party. They're out of the closet. But at this point, you have just too much money on the establishment side of the corporate Democratic Party that was able to put enough money into it and able to distance himself enough from the Ocasio-Cortez group that they were able to have major victories over the far leftists in the party. So that will continue to cause a rift, because you can bet there's a lot of very angry far lefties today, angry with their party. Remember, they are more angry with the Democratic Party than they are with the Republican Party. Yes, they hate Trump. Yes, they hate Republicans. But before they can even fight the Republicans and Trump, they have to win in their party. They have to take control of their party. And last night's elections show that they're a long way from that. They're just, like we've been saying, and many people have been saying, you can pick a few little spots in the country on the East Coast, maybe New York, Philadelphia, the urban areas, the inner cities, where you could have a far left-wing communist win like Cortez did. But across the country, in the South, the Midwest, the Rust Belt, the Farm Belt, you're just not going to find those types of Democrats there. So they're a fringe element of the party. They're the loudest voices in the party, and they're a problem for the Democrats, not for the Republicans. If anything, they help Republicans for various reasons. So Trump tweeted out today, 5 for 5. And he's absolutely correct. The 5 people he went and campaigned for won, and the people that Ocasio-Cortez was pushing, along with her left-wing friends, lost, and lost bad. But that did not stop the left-wing media today from coming out and claiming victory. Oh yeah, they didn't win those races, but they said it was a moral victory because they didn't lose as bad as they thought that they would lose. No, they were planning on winning those seats. That seat up in Ohio's 12th district, they poured a boatload of money into it, and that candidate really was a very moderate Democrat who has, throughout this entire campaign, has avoided criticizing Trump or Republicans. He's tried to paint himself as, hey, let's talk about what we're for. Let's try to be positive. And so he's been trying to distance himself away from the standard Democrats, which are to go after Trump hate constantly, 24 hours around the clock. He didn't run his campaign that way. He ran his campaign trying to be on the positive note, and he did actually very well in a district that Trump won by more than 10 points. He only lost by about 1%, 1 point. So he did pretty well. They had very good turnout compared to Republican turnout was low. But, I think he's on the right track. He lost, but he is on the right track. But the Democrats are too stupid to see that. Plus, they have such blind hatred for Trump and Republicans and all of us in general that they just can't help themselves. He showed them, though, the way that they can win and the way that they can do better and improve and solve a lot of their problems, but they're not going to pay attention because now he's just going to go down in the book as a loser. There are no such things as moral victories. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. You have a winner and a loser. No one will care when it comes time to vote for or against the Trump agenda about what the loser in the previous campaign's moral standing was, or whether or not there was a moral victory. Doesn't matter. The real moral victory will happen when the vote is cast, and it will not be that Democrat casting that vote. It will be the Republican. So there's another troubling, along with many, many troubling texts from Steele to Orr. So I'm going to go through a couple of these texts that were leaked from somebody to John Solomon regarding these 302's. Now, you know, a couple days ago, I think 2 videos ago, I said that I think that maybe Lisa Page is the one that may be leaking and talking. But now that I look at this here, this does not help her. This does not help her. So now I'm second guessing myself, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't really think at this point it is Lisa Page that's doing these leaks. It's starting to look like what's going on here is these leaks are actually coming from our guys, the good guys. Probably someone on the House Intel or House Oversight Committee. And I can understand it, because Sessions refuses to act. Rodenstein is totally corrupted. The media refuses, the corporate media refuses to even look or investigate the real crime, and the thing keeps dragging on. They're being stonewalled by the DOJ and the FBI, and I think that they're just trying to give themselves a fair shot. So I'm starting to think that these leaks are coming from, now I'm believing these leaks are probably not coming from Page, but maybe coming from individuals, the good guys on our side, who are on the House Intel Committee or House Oversight Committee, because they're just trying to stay in the game and they're frustrated as hell. They keep coming up with these bombshell crimes and the media will not even report on them. Sessions will not act. Rodenstein continues to obstruct. And I think that this just frustration has reached its peak level, and I think that you're now starting to see some leaks coming out from the good guys. Because, I mean, they have to be able to compete with the criminal media, corporate media, for the narrative. And I totally understand it, and I think it's totally justified. I think it's totally justified. So a lot of people are focusing on the following texts that occurred between Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele. Let me go through these with you. Very important. There's about a dozen. Let's focus on these for right now. So there's another troubling text from Christopher Steele to Bruce Orr, and this one took place on March the 7th, 2017. March 7th, 2017. So we have Steele texting Bruce Orr on March 7th, 2017, and he says, "Would it be possible to speak later today, please? We're very concerned by the Grassley letter and its possible implications for us, our operations, and our sources. We need some reassurances." Now, what he's talking about is the March 6th, 2017 letter from Grassley to former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, Comey, J. Edgar Comey. And in the letter, Grassley, if you remember that letter, I read it here on TowerGate. It's pretty lengthy. It took the whole video almost. Very detailed, specific questions from Grassley to Comey dealing with questions about the FBI's relationship with Steele. In the letter, Grassley is basically wanting Comey to produce all the communications and telling everything that they know and everything they've been doing about Steele. Grassley wants the whole ball game from the FBI on all their dealings with Steele, when they began, when they ended, if they ever ended, and all the communications that went on and what the hell they were all doing. So this was in the Daily Caller today from Chuck Ross. And he is commenting on the article, of course, written by John Solomon of The Hill, where John Solomon has obviously been given these leaked 302's between Bruce Orr and the FBI. So basically what John Solomon says about this particular text between Steele and Orr is that John Solomon says, simply put, that the FBI had Bruce Orr as a back channel to Steele and Clinton to defraud the FISA court. That's absolutely correct. We've known that for some time, but now we just have the evidence. More evidence. Smoking gun evidence, to be honest with you. It's not even any question at this point. That text removes any doubt about the fact that Bruce Orr was a back channel for the FBI to Steele, so that they could keep using Steele despite the fact that they had already told him he could no longer be an informant for them because he violated their rules in speaking with the media. And it should also be noted in this particular case that we not forget who Bruce Orr's boss was. That would be Silly Sally Yates. And nothing that Bruce Orr was doing here was being done without the knowledge and approval of Silly Sally Yates. You better lawyer up, Sally. Now, we'll get back to this in just a moment, but a couple other things I want to hit on. Excuse me. In the Gateway Pundit, Jim Hoft. Rand Paul was in Moscow today meeting with Putin, and he delivered a letter to Putin on behalf of President Trump. The letter emphasized the importance of further engagement in countering terrorism, enhancing legislative dialogue, and resuming unilateral exchanges. This is pretty important because they didn't try to keep it secret. Rand Paul said, yeah, I'm heading to Moscow for a visit, going to talk to Putin. Oh, and I'm taking a letter with me. So they're not trying to do this in secret. And he's very upfront about the fact that Trump's trying to, these are, let's warm this thing back up sort of letters. So it shows you that Trump obviously is not concerned that he's going to be hammered over this overture to Vladimir Putin to try to rewarm relations and settle things down. He's not afraid. And what does that tell us? Well, it tells us he's not afraid because he's not afraid of any consequences coming as a result of this being, known. And that tells us probably something a little deeper. If we want to think a little deeper into this, it probably tells us because Trump knows that in the end, when he gets through, that it's all going to come out exactly what happened, and he has nothing to fear about having a good relationship with Vladimir Putin. So he's going ahead and starting now to rebuild that relationship. He's not waiting any longer because he obviously feels comfortable enough at this point that he knows that he's got Mueller over a barrel and he's already won that fight. He knows he's going to get to the bottom of Spygate and he's going to be exonerated. And so in his mind, he's like, look, that stuff, I'm going to win that big fight. Soon enough, I'm going to win that fight. So I'm going to just go ahead and start getting things on the right track with Putin and Russia. That's what's going through his mind. Well, it looks like, according to Christina Layla at the Gateway Pundit, pretty much what I said yesterday is true, that Uncle Bob the Executioner's star witness, Rick Gates, fell apart during the cross-examination by Manafort's lawyers, and in the process of which he perjured himself, and he was caught by the judge, because it was the judge who, after Gates was, Manafort's lawyers were trying to get Gates to come clean on something. They hit him with 3 or 4 different approaches at it, but Gates kept giving I don't know, I can't remember type answers. And then finally Ellis remembered an answer he had given previously, and so after the questioning, he turned to Gates and said, hey, wait a minute, you said this. And he pulls through his transcript and says, you said this, an hour or so ago, now you're saying this. And so basically, Judge Ellis rattled the hell out of Rick Gates, and in fact pointed out that he had just perjured himself. Now, we also know that in the Enron case, that 2 of these attorneys who were on Uncle Bob the Executioner's team, one of them being Mr. Weissman, were accused, I don't think they were formally charged, but they were certainly pointed out and accused of sojourning perjury, meaning that they, as lawyers, coached their witness to lie. You're not allowed to coach your witness to lie, even if he's your client. You're not allowed to, as a lawyer, you're not allowed to coach your client to lie. But that's what Judge Ellis is basically getting to. And I think before this thing is over, Weissman and some of the people on Mueller's team, possibly Mueller himself, could find themselves in contempt of Judge Ellis's court. More bad news for the Clintons. It appears that inside the whisper campaign inside D.C. is that it's not just the rotten Reverend Clinton, but it's now Slick Willie who is being dissed. The Clintons apparently have been making themselves available and making overtures to candidates running in the upcoming elections, but nobody is interested in returning their calls. Others are flat out signaling that they that they want the Clintons to stay away. So at this point, what you can look for from the Clintons, as is normally the case, is that the Clintons will now levy some heavy retribution on those that are dissing them. So get your popcorn ready. You don't want to diss the Clintons. Yeah, you don't want them around, but dissing them is pretty dangerous. Even if you're a Democrat, they don't care. They don't like being dissed. So I mentioned earlier I was watching a Tracy Beanz video, who I love. And she's talking about the Bruce and she's talking about a couple things. One thing she nails very, very well. And she points out that in regards to the Bruce and Nellie Orr meetings with Christopher Steele, these meetings were in person, not just an email. They were actually in person meetings in D.C. on numerous occasions. And we know that several of these meetings took place well before July 31st, 2016, when apparently the Operation Crossfire Hurricane was opened. In fact, one of the meetings took place on the very morning before. It took place on July the 31st, 2018, or July 30th, 2018. And they opened up the investigation on July 31st, 2018, what they're telling us. But if they didn't open up the investigation, again, we've done this many times, until July 31st, 2016, then why was Bruce and Nellie meeting with Christopher Steele? Why were all these other activities going on? It's just crazy. And no one even believes that anymore. But just more evidence that this thing had started long before July 31st of 2016. And Peter's been stroking us, is lying through his teeth. And he's going to jail, obviously. So this also, we know that the communications really between Orr and Steele, if you go back and look at the beginning of when those communications began, it was right after Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz started his investigation. That is when Orr and Steele started using these encrypted communications. That's when they started encrypting their communications, right after Horowitz began his investigation. Orr and Steele, I'm referring to. Now, let's get to this other issue that Tracy Beanz and everyone else is talking about and trying to figure out. The big mystery, my guess is Q will probably tell us. But if Q doesn't tell you, I think I'll go ahead and do that for you now. I'll give Q a scoop. How about that? I'll give Tracy Beanz a scoop. I'll give everybody the scoop, because I've been through this. First of all, keep in mind, the person's name that I'm going to bring up now is someone we've heard before, when all this was going on before. If you remember before, months ago, we were talking about the fact that in the Senate Intel Committee, that corrupt committee, that Warner and Burr were talking to Mr. Waldman, who was using Mr. Deripaska as an intermediary to try to communicate with Steele. They were trying to set up a deal with Christopher Steele, and they were trying to get Julian Assange. They were trying to get Julian Assange to cut some sort of a deal and testify, or not even testify, but just cut a deal that would be favorable to both Julian Assange and to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Now, what did Julian Assange want? Well, he doesn't want to be arrested. He wants to walk out of that embassy and be a free man. What does the Senate Intelligence Committee want? Well, they want to maintain the Russia narrative. What is Julian Assange saying? He's saying that I can prove that these documents did not come from the Russian government or any government. So my guess is they were trying to get Assange to agree that they would give him immunity, allow him to become a free man if he would promise to shut up and never say a word or release any documents disproving the Russia narrative or disproving the narrative that the Russians hacked the DNC. That's most likely what was going on here. And it's still going on, by the way. They haven't stopped. That's why they're reaching out to him again. They're reaching out to him again. Because the last time the deal got killed by Comey. But Comey's not there anymore. So they're thinking now maybe they can get the deal done. So let's go through this. Keep in mind, as we're going through this, that Adam Waldman. Adam Waldman is a central character here. Because Adam Waldman is an attorney and a lobbyist. He served in the Clinton administration, the Bill Clinton administration, in the Justice Department. He was a lawyer in the Justice Department. He also represents Oleg Deripaska, the Russian steel magnate, steel billionaire. He also represents Christopher Steele. And he also represents Julian Assange. Adam Waldman represents Deripaska, Steele, and Assange. Keep that in mind. And keep in mind, he communicated with all these people, as well as Mark Warner, when they were trying to set the deal up before. And he also communicated a lot with Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS. So everyone is digging in, trying to find out who our guy is. Because in a couple of the texts from these 302's that John Solomon posted up in the Hill, they refer several times to someone as our guy. Everyone wants to know who our guy is. So I'm going to tell you who I think our guy is. But first, I'll go ahead and lay out the texts that everyone is examining today and trying to figure out. So here they are. Here's what everybody's talking about. Text as follows. January the 27th, 2017. Steele texted Bruce Orr. He said, "Hi, B. Our guy's okay." There he is. Our guy is okay for the time being, but I would like to keep our channel open on him and his situation, if that's all right. Many thanks for your support and best wishes. Then Orr responds to Steele by saying, "Understood. We will be available if needed. Just let me know." So obviously, Steele's saying that his guy's okay, that our guy's okay for the time being, and they would like to keep the channels open regarding his situation. So then they come back on January the 31st. 3 days later, they have the following conversation from Steele to Orr. "B, doubtless a sad and crazy day for you. Just wanted to check that you're okay. Still in SITU." Not sure what that means. "And able to help locally as discussed." So if you take that sentence and you put it together with the previous sentence, SITU must mean that he's saying that he is somewhere within the Washington, D.C. area, able to have a personal meeting if needed. Because he's saying, wanted to check with you that you're okay, still in SITU, and able to help locally as discussed, along with your bureau colleagues. With our guy, able to help locally as discussed, along with your bureau colleagues, with our guy, if the need arises. Many thanks, and best always, C. Then Orr comes back to Steele. "Yes, a crazy day. I am still here and able to help as discussed. I'll let you know if that changes." So what are they talking about here? Well, that was the day that Sally Yates was fired. So Sally Yates is Bruce Orr's boss, and she's part of the grand conspiracy. So essentially, Steele was texting Orr and saying, "Hey man, sorry to hear that your boss just got fired. Are you cool there?" And Orr's saying, "Yeah, well for now I'm cool. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but for now we're okay." And then Steele saying, "Yeah, we might want to get together and discuss our guy." At which point Orr says back to Steele, "Yeah, it is kind of crazy here, but I'm still here and I can still help. I can still do what we need. And yeah, I'll let you know if anything changes." Then Steele responds back and says, "Thanks. You have my sympathy and support. If you end up out, though, I really need another contact point number who is briefed. We can allow our guy to be we can't allow our guy to be forced to go back home. It would be disastrous all around." though his position now looks stable. A million thanks, C. Orr responds back to Christopher Steele. Understood. I can certainly give you an FBI contact if it becomes necessary. Then, on March the 7th, 2017, about a week later, Steele comes back to Orr and says, would it be possible to speak with you later today, please? We're very concerned by the Grassley letter and its possible implications for us, our operations, and our sources. We need some reassurance. We need some reassurance. Many thanks. Orr comes back to Steele. Sure. Would 1:30 today, DC time, work? Steele comes back to Orr. Yes, thanks, it would. Sorry to bother you so early, but I know you'll appreciate why we're concerned. So, let's recap this. Waldman, who served in the Clinton administration, who was also a lobbyist for Oleg Deripaska, who's currently under sanction, by the way, met with Julian Assange 9 times in 2017. Waldman met with Assange 9 times in 2017. We know because he has to sign in. Anytime you go visit Julian Assange, you go to sign in at the embassy. Assange's team has reached out to Waldman to try and work with the Trump administration to find some kind of deal. Remember, he had been working previously trying to get a deal, and Comey shot it down. Now, Waldman also met with Bruce Orr, and the topic was Assange. Waldman contacted Orr to try and broker a limited immunity deal, basically the same deal they had before, that Comey shot down. A deal was put in place back before Comey shot it down, and at that point it was David Laufman, who was the Deputy Assistant AG of Counterintelligence at the DOJ NSD. Laufman, of course, was either fired or quit, one of the two, because he's caught up in the scam. He's also going to jail. A deal was reached on March 28th, 2017, approved by Laufman. Of course, Comey overrode Laufman, because then Senator Mark Warner met with Comey. And the next thing you know, Comey kills the deal. So apparently, Warner had gone to Comey and said, yeah, we're working with Laufman and Waldman and Assange, and we think we've got a good deal. Well, we can give Assange immunity, and he'll protect the Russian narrative. And Comey shot it down. Comey shot it down. And so, Warner related this to Waldman. Warner called Waldman and said, hey, sorry, I just talked to Comey. Comey's killing the deal. It's off. At which point, the next thing that happened, on April 7th, 2017, WikiLeaks releases the Vault 7 WikiLeaks drop, which was extremely damaging. Extremely. So, what did Waldman, Warner, Steele, and Orr want from Assange? They wanted him to protect the Russian narrative and not drop the bomb. He's got the evidence, but they want him to keep it buried. And in return, they would work out something so that he could have immunity. So, it is in my opinion, Tracy, my dear, and Mr. Solomon, and all of you out there in the corporate media or alternative media, it is my opinion, I'm going on record right now to say, I believe our guy is Julian Assange. Let me give you one more piece of proof. A text from March 31st, 2017, from Waldman to Mark Warner. My other guy, like Steele, is very mistrustful of the U.S. government. He's been essentially shut out of the country and dragged through the mud. I explored this question with him last night in person.